Hello, and welcome to the show, everybody. Another edition of College Basketball Madness here, presented by Prime Sports World. I am your sole and only host here, Israel Rivera. Um, but before we go ahead and start the show, go ahead, please like, share, and subscribe to the Prime Sports World podcast here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. We're also on every streaming platform where podcasts can be heard, and that's Apple Music, Samsung Music, Samsung Podcast, Amazon Music, and Apple iHeartRadio and Spotify. So everybody go, please check those out as well in case you missed the show. Those are the audio versions of this show. I posted a link in the chat so you guys can go ahead and download those to any of your streaming devices that you have, whether that's an iPhone, tablet, or you just listen to it on the computer as well. And also go ahead and like and join our NBA Supreme and NFL Supreme Facebook groups for more fan interaction in the NFL and NBA. But Prime Sports World keeps it locked here, 360 degrees, 24/7, 365 days out the week, bringing you the most hot content here in the sports world, here in up-to-date content here in the sports world. We have a hell of a show for you guys. Starting off with the Brandon Miller situation, top 25 rankings, and going into my something of a forte here of mine, and that is my upset picks and my featured games of the week or of the day, because Saturdays around this time are for college basketball, and we're almost around the corner from March Madness. We are right there on the precipice of tournament basketball. We're wrapping up the regular season, getting into conference tournaments, which is always a great time of the year, and then March Madness, baby, where everybody is filling out their brackets for the 2022-2023 season. So very exciting time for college basketball fans. But let me just jump right into it. Usually I have a couple headlines, but this is the only headline and the top headline of the week, so to speak, and it's a very serious one. I hate to switch it up and go from kind of happy and joyful as I always do. Have to switch it up, but earlier this week, Tuesday, when it comes to the capital murder of Jamia Harris, Darius Miles, who was a basketball player for the University of Alabama, and his apprentice were charged with capital murder of a young lady on Alabama's campus back in January, which was not too far ago, which was probably about, it might have been 40 days ago, a little over 40 days ago or so. But this is it's Darius Miles and Michael Lynn Davis, who's a close friend of Darius Miles. But Brandon Miller's name is being brought up. When police testified on the opening statements, Brandon Miller, they testified that Brandon Miller was the one responsible for bringing the gun that murdered Jamia Harris, on that, woeful night there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, on the Strip, as they like to say, which is a popular place in Tuscaloosa for, college bar scene. We all have one in every college city, every college town. So just from what we know and what the public knows and what, the media knows, right? Because, the police have done somewhat sort of their due diligence. They have a lot more details than what we have, but they're only releasing certain, probably more simpler facts to the media and to the public for us to understand. But from what the police testified in court is that Brandon Miller was at home already. He was there on the scene before, but he went home because the line was too long to get in a bar. So Darius Miles and Michael Lynn Davis were, still there. They were, everybody was probably drinking. They were intoxicated, young 21-year-olds, just, regular college scene there. Brandon Miller was at home, and there was in between that hour or 2 hours that, happened, that occurred. There was some type of argument. There was some type of situation where, where this young lady, Jamia Harris, and her cousin or brother or boyfriend wasn't involved. I think it's all three of them were all involved in this little altercation with Michael Lynn Davis and Darius Miles. Where Brandon Miller's linked is Brandon Miller is supposedly Darius Miles' ride that night, right? He's his ride. Darius Miles texts Brandon Miller to bring him his gun. Now, saying that, Alabama is an open carry state. Alabama is a state in which I believe it's a stand your ground law, but this isn't the stand your ground situation, right? So Darius Miles tells Brandon Miller to bring him his gun within like an hour of time. But I believe when he texted him, when they got the text, it was like moments. It was the time from the time of the shooting to the time of the text. It was relatively close. Now, supposedly, when they got there, Brandon Miller and another Alabama player that was there with Brandon Miller, I think, that went to go pick them up. His car accidentally blocked, and this is supposedly blocked Jamia. We haven't seen the footage yet. Blocked Jamia Harris and the other occupants' car from kind of escaping, right? So that's pretty much the news that we have. We don't have anything else other than that. We do know that Brandon Miller played the next day after these allegations came out. Brandon Miller played, and let me just be clear for everybody. Brandon Miller is not being charged with anything. The DA came out and said, unfortunately, we don't have enough or we don't have any evidence to charge Brandon Miller with anything. Now, why is Brandon Miller so important for any of the casual fans that watch this podcast or are watching this podcast for the first time? Brandon Miller is a projected top 3 pick. You have Victor Wembanyama, who is being touted as the next LeBron. You have the consolation prize, who would probably go number 1 in any other draft, in Scoot Henderson, who's playing in the G League. And then you have Brandon Miller, who is supposed to be the 3rd guy off the board in this NBA draft. And you put like any other draft, Brandon Miller would probably be number 1 overall if it wasn't for Victor Wembanyama. Scoot Henderson, the same thing. If it wasn't for Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson probably number 1 overall. In any other draft. So you have this draft is deep. You have projected 3 number 1 overall type of talents going in, because when you have the NBA draft, there's guys, there's tiers to this, right? You have number 1 overalls, and there's guys that probably should never be number 1 overall, right? But with that being said, this is why it's so big, because the magnitude of his future and the magnitude of the situation, they're clashing, right? We don't know how this is going to affect his draft status, but also we're talking about a human life here. We're talking about someone who was murdered, and he was linked to that. And I don't want to, and I'm kind of going to give you my theory a little bit on what I think happened, which a lot of media pundits probably couldn't do on live TV. I can do it on my podcast. I'll give you a theory of mine, and a theory of why possibly Alabama prosecutors didn't charge Brandon Miller, and I'm going to get to that. So the magnitude of his future, the magnitude of the situation, is at a high time level. He ended up playing in South Carolina. He dropped 41 points and hit the game winner in overtime. If you guys haven't seen that game, he had a poster over two guys that was a thing of beauty. This guy is like watching Paul George doppelganger. This guy is Paul George 2.0. He's shooting over 40% from the field. I mean, he looks better than what Paul George looked out of Fresno State as a freshman. You know, Paul George was there at Fresno State for what, 2-3 years. This kid's a freshman. This kid's a freshman, a true freshman at that. And so he looks like he is ahead of the curve. He looks so smooth. He has an NBA body, an NBA game. He is an amazing talent. But the big thing is, and the controversy is where the Alabama Crimson Tide men's basketball program and the athletic program are still allowing him to play. Are they, should they be allowed to let him play? Should he play? Should he not play? That is the big question here for Brandon Miller in Alabama, right? Nate Oates came out and said he was at the wrong place, wrong. Now, he said some insensitive. This is very insensitive, saying wrong place, wrong time. That's very insensitive to say in terms of this situation, especially to the Harris family and to Jameer Harris, who had left behind a child in this world. Talking about a murder here. We're talking about a life here. And he had to double back and say and kind of apologize for that. And now, he's also said that him and the university, they're doing the right thing with Miller. They've done the due diligence. They've cooperated all the way. Miller's been very, 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 emotional about the whole situation. I'm assuming, he feels terrible about the situation. He was, he literally brought the gun to an intoxicated man. He knew this guy was intoxicated. He knew his friend was intoxicated, and he still brought them a gun to, I don't, whether he knew the situation or not. It's still, guys are drinking, a gun. That doesn't mix well, right? So I kind of go back to my own personal life, right? I've done stupid things at 18, 19, 20 years old even. We're still considered, I don't think we're fully matured adults at that point. We've all done stupid things for friends. We've all done stupid things for older people that we shouldn't have done. I don't think in this situation, Brandon Miller knew what he was doing. I think he knew what he was doing for a friend. I think he thought that he was just helping a friend out by bringing his possessions, but he wasn't thinking about what was going to happen when he brought him that possession, when he brought him that firearm. He did not know what was going to happen. And that's one of my theories. Like he literally legit know. And so here's what Nate Oates had to say. We've been taking it very seriously from day one. The first minute that I got the information, I called AD Greg Byrne and we talked about it and the severity of it. Nate Oates said on Friday. Greg I thought did a great job of addressing those comments on Wednesday, and I really don't have much to add to it. We feel like we've done the right thing in this case, so I'm going to leave it at that with Greg's comments. This is the type of situation I don't think should have been handled by, and the AD Greg Burns said that this went to the president and this went to the the council and the powers that may be throughout Alabama. But this is a situation where I think the president of the university should have handled this. This is out of the realm of the athletic department, in my opinion. This is out, and I know he's an athletic student, but I think this has to be, when it comes to a legal issue like this. This is out of their hands. This is, the president of the university should have came down and made a decision, a informed decision, instead of those guys making a decision. And maybe he did. Maybe they all kind of made a decision to let Brandon Miller playing. The only thing that I know is that Alabama's number 2 overall in the nation. This is the highest ranking they've ever had in school history. They're on the precipice of possibly winning a national championship. I mean, depending on how their tournament goes. Brandon Miller's probably one of the top 2 players. He's the best college basketball player in the nation, even though he probably won't win the Naismith. Maybe he may win the Naismith. I don't know. As a true freshman, I don't know now. But he was up there with Zach Edey and all those other boys. And when I look at it, I go, maybe he shouldn't have played. Maybe I think Alabama should have kept him out in the South Carolina game. Maybe they should have kept him out in the Arkansas game today. That those are conversations that are going in my head as well as everybody else's. Maybe this kid shouldn't have played in that game. Maybe they should have, kind of kept him out a little bit, maybe for about a week or two, maybe until March Madness time, maybe until conference tournament time, to kind of get everything, in order, all the evidence, more details of the situation before, they played him again. Not saying that he shouldn't play, because if he's innocent of everything, which they haven't charged him, so he's not charged with having any crime, which I'm going to get to a theory on that. He's not charged with any crime or anything like that. So I think that's why, and he's been very cooperative. I think that's why Alabama hasn't suspended him. That's why I think Alabama has played him. But a lot of me has questioned this. Would this happen if it was a guy at the end of the bench? We've seen college basketball players and college players get suspended for way less than this. Way less than this. The severity of this situation is incredulous. It's incredible. And the fact that, he's still playing even though he's linked to a murder, it kind of baffles me on Alabama's side. It kind of makes it seem like Alabama's taking their athletics over a human life in a possible way. But the other side, that's the 50% side. The other side of me says, well, if the kid isn't being charged with anything, and he's innocent of everything, and he was, just kind of there, and he was doing a favor for a friend by bringing him his possession, and there's nothing that implies that he knew what Darius Miles was going to do that night, then the other side of me says, well, he should play. He was just, bringing someone their possession. He didn't know what was going to happen, so it's a very sticky situation. It's a very unknown situation. We've never been in these waters like this before. What I do know is that the end of the situation is it's not the end of this situation, especially for Brandon Miller. Even though he's not going to be charged in this capital murder, even though he's not going to be charged, the DA doesn't have enough evidence, or they don't have evidence, or they don't have anything to charge him with. The Harris family, I assume they're going to bring a civil lawsuit to Alabama University, the athletic department, and Brandon Miller himself, especially when Brandon Miller makes his NBA. There will be some sort of legal civil suit that will occur here. We saw it with the lacrosse players at Virginia, right? Where the one male lacrosse player killed his girlfriend, who was a women's lacrosse player, and the family sued the university, the athletic department, and everything like that. And the lacrosse team still played in the tournament, and I think made it to the Final Four that year, when they probably should have been suspended or something in that nature. I look at one guy and I'm like, well, it should mess it up for the whole team, but at the same time, there should have been some type of sanctions there or something like that, right? Especially if there was some known domestic dispute, which there was. So my thing is with Brandon Miller, here is where I come into with my theory about why he probably isn't charged. He was already their bride. He goes home. I believe the gun was already in the car from the get-go. From the start of the night, the gun was in the car. The gun was in the car already. It's not like I don't think Brandon Miller went back to the dorm, wrapped it up, put it in a hat, brought it, came back, yada, yada, yada. I think the gun was already in the car. And all Brandon Miller did was drive to the spot drive to the location to pick Miles up, and the gun was already in the car, which is maybe a reason why the district attorney hasn't charged Brandon Miller with anything, and probably why they aren't going to charge Brandon Miller with anything, because everybody's being cooperative, and the gun was already in the car, and he didn't go and pick the gun up. Now, I don't know what the laws are. I don't know what the laws are in terms of the state of Alabama in terms of being an accessory. So maybe I should read up on what the laws are. But police and law enforcement have much more information than what we have right now. And for them to not charge him, if they were going to charge him with anything, they would have already did it, because they already have a lot of the information. Now, they're probably digging through the nuances and coming out with more detailed information. They have cameras. There's cameras everywhere now these days. They probably already seen the footage and everything like that. But with that being said, if they were going to charge him, they would have charged him already with the crime. So I don't think, my theory on it is that maybe the gun was already in the car, and if the gun was already in the car and he was just his ride, and Miles was like, well, bring me my gun, meaning we'll just come here and come get me, then that might be an out for him to not be charged. And that's just my theory on the whole situation. But if it was up to me, if I was the president of Alabama, if I was the athletic director, if I was Nate Oates, I probably would not be playing Brandon Miller right now. I probably would not be playing Brandon Miller right now, because the rest of the season, this is going to be an issue. I don't think Brandon Miller should be – I think Brandon Miller should be suspended indefinitely. I mean, this is a human life. This is a murder. This is something that this young man probably – if he's innocent, he doesn't need to be playing. I mean, this is a life we're talking about. We're choosing basketball over a life. I don't think he should be playing when it comes to the magnitude of the situation until – there's more detailed information on it as to why they didn't charge him, and to the public's knowledge, but also just for the family, out of respect for the family. I just think that if in the Alabama basketball program, best believe there's going to be some sanctions going down with Nate Oates. I mean, and there's multiple athletes. Multiple athletes are out there on the strip, because this is where all the college athletes goes, where all the college students go, for the bar, on the bar scene in Tuscaloosa, right? So there's multiple witnesses, multiple athletes, but you have at least two or three, because there's a third Alabama player that was there on the scene with Brandon Miller that I think was another witness. So you have three Alabama players, basketball players, that were witnesses, in a murder, and one of them is being charged with capital murder. So your basketball program is linked to a murder. Okay, even though Miles didn't pull the trigger, his involvement was still there with his friend. The situation was escalated. So my whole situation, my whole thing is that Brandon Miller shouldn't play out of respect for the family, possibly for the rest of the season. I don't want to make that decision. I don't want to say that, but he should at least be suspended maybe the rest of the regular season, maybe conference tournament, and then maybe you bring him back during the regular NCAA tournament. Maybe. We don't know if that's what's going to happen. There's no links today. There's nothing today saying that he's not going to play against Arkansas. There's a big game in the SEC today. It's in Tuscaloosa. So yeah, that's just my consensus on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and see what Brandon Miller, if he should be playing or not for the rest of the season. If he should be suspended indefinitely, if he should be suspended, for a few games and come back for the conference tournament or the tournament time, or if they should just suspend him for the rest of the season. Just and have him whatever, he's done for the season, and he can go focus on his pro career or focus on his legality situation right here. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Moving forward to the top 25 rankings, this week we actually have Alabama. Alabama is actually the number one team in the nation after beating. Not Alabama is the number. No, Houston is the number one team. I don't know why I got Alabama, but it's actually Houston at number one, Alabama at two. Here to start the rankings. Sorry about that. That I have the rankings there mixed up at the top. Then at number three, we got Kansas, who actually has been pretty good since their 4-game losing streak. Kansas just had a big win over. They had a big win over Baylor. They had a big win over TCU. Big win over Texas. Since their 3-game losing streak, Kansas has gone in their last. They have one loss to Iowa State, which was by 15 at Iowa State, which is a tough place to play. But they beat Kentucky. They beat Kansas State. They beat number 5 Texas. Beat Oklahoma and Oklahoma, beat Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, beat number 9 Baylor, which was a beautiful game that they played. They were losing in the first half. Baylor looked like they were going to dominate and run away with it, and Kansas just came back playing amazing defense. Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick, DeJuan Harris, all those guys, they played amazing in the second half of that game and won 87-71. And then they went into TCU and beat number 24 TCU by 5. So Kansas has been on the up and up in the last 5. They're 5-0, beating 3 ranked opponents here in the Big 12, which is a gauntlet, like I've said. So Kansas moves up to number 3. Number 4, UCLA. We got number 5, Purdue, who has a big game against Indiana, trying to bounce back from losing against them the last time in Indiana. So that one's in Purdue in West Lafayette. So you guys be in tune for that game. Might be a feature game of the week here. We don't know here. At number 6, we got Virginia. They have another big game going into Chapel Hill this week, this Saturday. So watch out for that one. Number 7, we got Arizona. Number 8, Texas. Number 9, Baylor. They actually have a showdown, Texas and Baylor today, which is probably our number 1 feature game of the week, but we'll get to that. At number 10, Marquette. Number 11, Tennessee. At number 12, we got Gonzaga moving up here in the rankings. They have a big game as well this week against St. Mary's, this Saturday against St. Mary's. Watch out for that. Number 13, we got Miami moving up 2 slots. Number 14, Kansas State moving down 2 slots. Number 15, St. Mary's moving up 2 slots. And then we have number, godly, I'm so sorry. We got number 16, Xavier, stand pat there at number 6 at 16. They didn't move up and move down. They had a game against Villanova a few days ago, in which it was a very close game that they lost, but they bounced back. They lost by 1 to Villanova at home. But they bounced back really well against a very competitive team in Seton Hall, which kind of made up for that loss against Nova. That's a tough division. I mean, the Big East has 5 ranked teams or so in the top 25. So Xavier definitely, one of those middle of the pack, teams in the top 25 that can make some noise in the tournament. At number 17, we got Indiana moving down 3 slots. Interesting thing about Indiana, I mean, they had a pretty good week last week, but they lost to Northwestern, which vaulted unranked Northwestern team, which vaulted them into the top 25. Then they go to Michigan State and they lose to Michigan State. They squeaked out a close one against Illinois last week. And then they have a big showdown against Purdue coming up here in West Lafayette. So watch out for that one. But yeah, Indiana moves down a couple slots here in the top 25 rankings. Then we got number 18. We got UConn moving up 2 slots. Then we got number 19, Creighton moving down a slot. Know why Creighton moved down a slot. Losing to Marquette, at home was a big. I mean, this is the team that in the beginning of the season they stumbled out really hard in the middle, in that first quarter of the season, and then they kind of reeled off a bunch of big wins. In their last 3 games, they lost to Providence, 94-86 at Providence. They beat St. John's, by 10. It was a close game until, last few minutes or so. And then they lost a close one to Marquette, number 10 Marquette. And I think they would have beat Marquette. Creighton would probably be in that top 15 range right now. But Creighton moves down a couple slots here in the top 25 rankings. At number 20, we got Providence moving up 4 slots. At number 21, Northwestern moving up 5 slots in the rankings here. And when the new rankings come out, I'm not sure if Northwestern should move down, but they did have a hell of a the last few weeks, this past month, they've been great. Beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin, beat Ohio State at Ohio State, beat number 1 Purdue, beat number 14 Indiana. Both games were at home. Beat Iowa by 20 at home, and then they lost a close one in Champaign against Illinois by 4 points. I'm not going to hold them to that because Illinois is a talented team. They're probably on the precipice of, possibly, being a fringe top 25 team in a way. But yeah, the Northwestern Wildcats, I assume that, when the new polls come out, they should move down maybe a couple slots. But for right now, they're number 21. At number 22, we got San Diego State moving down a slot. Number 23, we got Iowa State moving down 4 slots. And then wrapping up the top 25, we got TCU and Texas A&M at 24 and 25, respectfully. And then on the precipice of being a top 25 team, I think when the new rankings come out, I think Pittsburgh will be in there. I think NC State will be in there. And then I think next up, you have Maryland and Kentucky kind of right behind those 2 teams that are being there. I know Illinois, I just mentioned them, Illinois, Arkansas, who plays today. Boise State's another good team. They got a few top 25 votes as well. Duke's got some top 25 votes here and as well. But I think when it's all said and done, I think NC State will be back in the top 25. Pittsburgh will probably be back in the top 25. We'll see what happens with those games with Texas A&M and San Diego State here coming up today. Anyways, moving forward to our Prime Sports World games to watch. And this is a staple here. If you watch any of our college basketball content during college football season, me and Christian, we go over the Prime Sports, the feature games to watch. For that Saturday, and then I picked my upset picks. Last week, I only got 1 upset right, and I do apologize if you guys did take my advice, but I only got 1 upset right, and that was Kentucky over number 10 Tennessee. Illinois lost to Indiana. Oklahoma State lost to TCU by a lot, and St. John's lost to Creighton by 10. So those were my upsets last week, but Kentucky did beat number 10 Tennessee, so that was pretty good. So I went 1 for 4 there last week. So hopefully I do a lot better this week when it comes to my upsets. But feature games to watch, we got a rivalry game here. Arizona State going into number 7 Arizona. That should be a big one. We talked about Arkansas, Alabama earlier when we were talking about the Brandon Miller situation. Arkansas goes into number 2 Alabama. Just want to kind of touch a little bit on that game. That's a scary game for Alabama. Just because of the way Arkansas, they're athletic, they get out, they defend. They could make things a little difficult. And we saw South Carolina, Brandon Miller was, matched up against one of the better defensive teams in the SEC, even though the record doesn't show it. But South Carolina, gave them everything that they can handle. Even though South Carolina is a 10-win team, in that game, you got a guy, Gregory Jackson, a guy in Michi Johnson, who are very, great defenders. They were switched on Brandon Miller at all times, especially Greg Jackson the second. And Brandon Miller still, scored, 41 points against Alabama. So, the South Carolina, gave them some fits. When I look at this game, very similar team, just better in terms of, when it comes to Arkansas, right? And like I said, Arkansas can get out, they can defend, they can get in transition. They can make things a little difficult for Alabama. here in this game, and they have a freshman. They have a freshman there themselves that is really good as well. In in Anthony Black. Sorry, I was looking, kind of getting his name here together. And Anthony Black, who is probably a lottery pick himself, he will probably have a lot of responsibility on Brandon Miller today. This is a kid, very similar skill set, as Brandon Miller. He probably does a lot of good things, not great things, which is why he's probably a top 10 or top 15 projected pick. But watch out for that matchup between Anthony Black and Brandon Miller today. I think that one should be fireworks. So yeah, I think Arkansas-Alabama is going to be a really good game, competitive game. I think Arkansas has a shot to possibly dethrone Alabama at that number 2 to beat Alabama this week in Tuscaloosa. But we'll see if that happens. I don't have them as my upset pick because I'm not too confident that will happen. I think as long as Brandon Miller, they're playing at home, he looked inspired in that South Carolina game. If he plays anything like that game, I like Alabama's chances. Going into the other games that we have, got number 17 Indiana going into number 5 Purdue. As I said, Purdue lost the last one in Bloomington, so they're looking to come back and get a W here against the Indiana Hoosiers. And then the late night game, we have number 15 St. Mary's going into number 12 Gonzaga, which Gonzaga lost the last game to St. Mary's. So I think this would be, they're always beating each other. It's kind of splitting the season series once every other year, unless like Gonzaga's, unless Gonzaga's in, like the top 5 or top 2 or the number 1 team in the nation. But yeah, St. Mary's always gives them fits. I think Gonzaga pulls this one out, beating St. Mary's at home. The last game they played, St. Mary's beat them on their floor 78-70. And, I think I mentioned it before. St. Mary's has a really good freshman in Aiden Mahaney, who can flat out just shoot it. Last game, he had 18 points. Drew Timme had 23. He was Gonzaga's senior leader there. But Aiden Mahaney, true freshman, is an amazing shooter, from 3. He is a bucket for St. Mary's. If you guys haven't watched him, he is a treat to watch. That should be a good game. That's a late night game on ESPN there. You guys don't want to miss that one. Gonzaga versus St. Mary's. And then the big one, I think, the game of the week, number 8 Texas going into number 9 Baylor. This game is going to be a treat, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, Baylor, I actually had picked Baylor to win the national. I think a couple weeks ago I picked Baylor to win the national championship, just because I love the way they play. Keontae George, he's a top 10 prospect. This kid is flat out sensational. But they have 2. I said the gauntlet after they won 4 games in a row. They had number 5 Kansas. They lost to number 14 Kansas State. Both of those games on the road, so they're looking to bounce back from both of those games. And both of those games were not, the Kansas and Kansas State games were close in the first half. Second half, both those teams kind of pulled away. So Baylor's looking to bounce back with the game against Texas. And they lost the last game on the road against Texas. So, 76-71. So I look for Baylor to come out, very, intense defense like they've done the last couple games, but they have to finish, that intensity. They have to play all 40 minutes of the basketball game. They can't let off the gas pedal in the second half. Texas is led by Marcus Carr, as well, who's a senior leader out of Toronto, Ontario, leading them in points and assists. He is the catalyst for that Texas team as well. So this is going to be a very good game. I believe Keontae George, Adam Flagler, those guys, I think they'll get it done this time against Texas at home. I know it's a very situation. They don't want to drop 3 in a row. They are very desperate to get a W. So look for Baylor to win that game against Texas. I don't have that as an upset pick, because I believe those two teams are very evenly matched. It's not really an upset if Baylor wins. So, let me get Baylor winning that game against Texas. And then my upsets of the week, I got New Mexico, a late night game here. New Mexico over San Diego State, number 22 San Diego State. I got Mississippi State over number 25 Texas A&M. That game, I believe, is being played there down in Mississippi State, if I'm not mistaken. And they're actually a 1-point favorite in that game. Texas A&M has kind of been inconsistent in a way in finishing basketball games. I like Mississippi State to win that basketball game today. I got Texas Tech over number 24 TCU. I think Texas Tech is favored as well by 2 points on the line here. So give me Texas Tech over TCU. I got UNC over number 6 Virginia. Yes, North Carolina. Just kind of touch on their game a little bit, right? Got a top 10 opponent coming in Virginia. North Carolina really needs a win. They've dropped their last couple games. Very, very disappointing team. This is the number 1 team in the nation at one point to begin the season, but like they are not ending the season well. In their last 7 games, they are 2-5 in the last 7 games, with the wins against Clemson and wins against Notre Dame, two of probably the worst teams in the ACC. 2 games in which they're supposed to win. They struggled a little bit with Notre Dame, but they lose to Miami, they lose to NC State, lost to Wake Forest, lost to Duke, lost to Pitt by 1 point. So they really need a win here against Virginia. I do believe they still make the tournament just based on strength of schedule. But this is not a good look, losing your last, going 2-5 in your last 7 games. I do believe that they'll get it done. They can beat Virginia. This is going to be a tough game, though. They're going to need a lot of Caleb Love magic, a lot of Armando Bacot. But this is a Virginia team that's well coached. This is a team that is seasoned. They're led by Armand Franklin, with 12.4 points per game. Kihei Clark, leading them with 5.7 points per game, 11 points, 5.7 assists a game with 11.6 points per game. So this is a team that, can really get after it, on defense, on offense, well coached here. So I do believe that UNC can pull this game off, though, but they're going to have to stay focused and they have to play all 40 minutes of this basketball game if they want to win. Some interesting, facts about this game. The Tar Heels, they're 11-2 on their home court this year. So, and they're 0-3 in games that are decided by 3 points or fewer. So when the Tar Heels get out to a big lead this year, they're gold. They're golden. So that's my thing, is that they have to get out to a big lead in this game. At least, with the last 7 to 6 minutes of the game, they have to be at least up by 10, in my opinion, to pull this game off against Virginia. Virginia is 13-4 in the conference play, averaging 15.9 assists per game to lead the ACC this season. So well-coached team, like I said. This is a team that very scary towards tournament time. I do. Virginia is a player to possibly win a national championship. Then I got Villanova beating Creighton this week. I know Creighton's coming into Philadelphia this week. I love what I saw out of Cam Whitmore in the last game, out of Eric Dixon and those boys, the last game out of Villanova when they played against Xavier a few nights ago. So, I'm gonna have to go with Villanova with the upset here against number 18 Creighton. I just think Creighton, is gonna, I think one thing about that Villanova game against Xavier, they played with toughness. They played those big guards, the big wings. They played with toughness. They got in the paint. They made things tough for Xavier to guard them. And if they could do the same thing against Creighton, I like Villanova to win this game. The record doesn't speak for how tough they've been playing the last second half of the season. So I'm going to have to give this edge to Villanova at home, going up against Creighton. And some other notable games that I can, kind of tote out here that I think that can possibly be some upsets here on the slate, but I didn't want to include them. These are some fringe upsets St. John's playing at home against UConn. Even though I know UConn's a 7-point favorite, St. John's plays very, very, very tough there. Oklahoma going into number 23 Iowa State, even though I think that that's a tough game for Oklahoma and Iowa State's money at home, I think Oklahoma has proven that they can play teams tough on the road. And so Oklahoma is a sneaky team to watch out for when it comes to today. And then I'm gonna have to go I have to go possibly Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State at home. I know Oklahoma State's kind of been reeling. They're a Fringe Top 25 team, getting some votes this past week. Kansas State, very tough team. That could be a trap game a little bit for Kansas State. So watch out for that game as well, ladies and gentlemen, here this week. But anyways, that has been a show for College Basketball Madness. Go ahead, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast here at Prime Sports World, Facebook, Twitter, at David's Twitter. My Twitter's Izzy underscore P at PS Izzy underscore PSW. So you guys go ahead and follow me on Twitter there. But go ahead and please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And then in case you missed us, you can catch us there on all platforms where podcasts can be heard. And that's Apple Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and many more. So you guys don't want to miss that content. Drop the link down there in the comment section so you guys don't want to miss that content. And go ahead and like our Facebook group pages, NBA Supreme and NFL Supreme, for more fan interaction in the NBA world and NFL world and news. And this is Prime Sports World, bringing you the heat 365 days of the year, 24/7, baby. We got you covered 360 degrees around the axis. So you guys don't want to miss that most up-to-date fire content that Prime Sports World brings you here. I do think we have another following show here with David and TJ, so you guys don't want to miss that later on today. But in case I miss you guys, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and sayonara, suckers. Until next time, I am your host, Israel Rivera. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen.